Yo, what up, everybody? Hope you're having a good day. It's Friday.
At least give her a good phone call.
My coworker hates the people that are like, "Oh, Monday sucks and I live for Friday." He's like, "If you only live for Friday, you need to find a new job." He's probably right. Not saying I live for Friday, but you know, I enjoy not going to work on 2 days a week, I'll tell you that much. So anyway, today gonna talk about, this is one of those rambling kind of days where I talk about nonsense and nothing I say is related to the program or anything like that. Well, kind of maybe, but not really, not officially anyway. Unofficially, off the record. So be warned now anyway. So so I think the other day somebody shared something with me, and it was like a picture of it was like one of those little like cutesy pictures that had some words on it or whatever. It's kind of like a meme, but not really, more like an insight or something. And it was talking about shamans back in the ancient day. They used to, when shamans are like the medicine man of the tribes or whatever. A lot of them have woo-woo powers as well, but mostly medicine man. People are sick, they go to the shaman, and like the shaman would say something along the lines of, when somebody's sick came to them, it was like, well, when did you stop laughing? When did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop having fun? It's basically trying to say that, those are the things that keep you healthy, and if you stop doing it, then, what are you doing, right? Like, that's why you're sick, dummy. And I was like, that's like kind of a cool little saying, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? Especially in today's world where we're all just kind of going through the rigmarole of it all, through the blah motions. Most people aren't like super excited, ecstatic. There's a lot of PC culture. You're not allowed to say certain things that might actually be funny or lighthearted in nature, you know what I mean? Because everybody's offended about everything. And even just beyond that, just like there's a serious tone to it all. And honestly, I probably have trauma from this, because I felt like this in like kind of like the corporate world, you know what I mean? There's just like certain things you can't do or whatever, right? And I'm, kind of internally rebellious in a lot of ways, so I always feel like, well, why not? Like I'll ask the why question, and then you ask the why question, and people's programming breaks down and they glitch out or whatever, and it's kind of funny, but it also is like not funny, because it's like, man, it's just like simple stuff I'm asking here, or simple things I'm questioning here, and like a lot of people don't really have like a very good rebuttal or response to something like that. So I was man, talk about like not even knowing where I was. So anyway, that shaman post or whatever was like pretty interesting. I thought it was cool. And it kind of made me think about this too, because I don't know why. Probably because like Dr. Wilson always talks about like homeschooling and stuff, and how you should send your kids to public school, and I think that's a pretty spot on assessment or whatever. So then I'm kind of always like, well, what would I like actually teach my kids or whatever? And then part of that too is like, well, my roommate's a teacher, so like I kind of think about teaching a little bit. I got some more insights, you know what I mean? So I'm like, well, like I wonder what like it's important to teach or whatever, right? And oddly enough, he's like a music teacher too, so he's not teaching like mathematics, science, or anything like that. So I'm like, well, that's kind of like, a lot of people would say like that's like soft. That's not even a good word, but it's intangible for a lot of people. Like, why even worry about it? So I was like, well, what would you teach your kids? And I was like, well, you kind of want to teach your kids like to be successful. Like, I think that's like a pretty good like to be moral and to be successful, right? Like, those are pretty good tenets or whatever, right? So I think moral we can all kind of agree upon for the most part. Like, I'll just throw out 10 commandments, roughly, a golden rule. Like, if you're living that life, you're doing pretty good, right? How easy is it to explain that? It took me like 2 seconds, right? Solves all the world's problems in like 2 seconds. But the successful part is a little different, because everybody's measure of success is slightly different or whatever, right? And so I was sitting here trying to think to myself, like, what would actually qualify as success? And it kind of reminded me of that shaman quote where they're like, well, are you singing? Are you dancing? Are you joyful? Are you happy? Are you all that kind of stuff? Because like at the end of the day, like I think people who like their life or enjoy their life, like that's kind of the stuff that they engage in or whatever, right? Like if they're like having just goober fun with like their family and friends, and there's low stress in their life, like that's pretty much where it is or whatever, right? And I was like, I was like, man, like that's probably pretty spot on. So like, what does that do to something like you'd be teaching your kids? You'd probably be less concerned about long division and calculus. You know, I learned calculus. I probably haven't used it ever in my life. Geometry. Actually, I've used geometry for the more time since I got this new job than I have like ever in my life before. But you know, all that stuff's actually pretty easy to like understand and learn. And plus, you can like kind of Google a lot of this crap anyway, and like just kind of figure it out like on the fly. I don't know. It's not very hard, right? So, back to what I said when I said moral and success and health, right? That'd be another thing you want to teach your kids. Professor Joe in the house. Sup? So anyway, yeah, so I don't know why I had to make that crazy tangent backwards, but I just thought about it. Yeah, so you're thinking about like what's successful, and it's basically like making your kids happy and joyful and all that kind of stuff, versus like traditional success is like, well, do you have a good job? Do you have a career? Is your car new that you probably have to make payments for? Do you own that house or whatever, right? And you know, I don't know, there's like pressures, you could say, indirect and direct from, you know, probably family and stuff, where they say, I need to be doing this, where most people probably just want to be like the guy who lives in Jamaican Beach and like polishes surfboards and teaches the tourists like how to surf or whatever, right? And they just kind of get by, and it's like kind of fun, and it's pretty chill, right? Like there's like, that guy's probably like very happy or whatever, right? Maybe not, maybe I'm just assuming, but you know, from the outside looking in, I could see how you would be happy about something like that. So you know, I was like, well, like, yeah, I think that's like something to strive for or whatever. So what does that do? So how does that change the curriculum or whatever, right? And I don't really have like a full answer to this, you know, this is just stuff that I'm thinking about and still formulating opinions on, and I'm sure I'll come up with things. But yeah, it really changes the paradigm, right? And then imagine like you're like telling like your friends and all your muggle normie people in your life that you're like, yeah, you know, like we don't really do this in school, we don't do this in school, but we do a lot of creative stuff, and we do a lot of funny stuff, and we laugh a lot, you know what I mean? They're like, you're crazy, man, like your kid's gonna be stupid, you know what I mean? Probably like general sentiments or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, probably, like I think like when that time comes, like everybody will probably be like, dude, this is like kind of crazy, but you know what, that's okay, because like I said kind of yesterday, I was kind of pointing out the fact that I think like the world's kind of crazy, right? Like the Matrix is kind of crazy. When you start to pierce through it a little bit, you're like, whoa, that's weird. And it kind of reminds me of something somebody told me early on in nutritional balancing, where they're like, actually, I was like, wow, we do all these like crazy things, and they're actually like, well, this is actually like what the normal human is supposed to be, and everybody else is actually crazy because they're out of whack, or they're like mutants is like a word I kind of like, right? Like their chemistry's all messed up or whatever. And I was like, that's probably true, actually, as weird as that sounds. So yeah, I don't know. So just kind of thinking about things that like would be successful, would be like joy and happiness and all that kind of stuff. But then, you know, so I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like as an adult or something like that? Like what would that be? What kind of living situation would you kind of strive for or whatever? And then, you know, I guess I'd like, again, I don't have all the answers to all this, right? Like the one I would be like, well, I'll just be a bazillionaire, right? And I'll just like take it easy. And like, doesn't mean I don't have things I want to do, and there's still not like work I want to accomplish and things I want to do. It just means like, you know, it's ultimately like kind of just reducing that stress factor or whatever, right? And yeah, I don't know. It just isn't very emphasized in our culture anyway. And actually, I did an experiment the other day, because my roommate was telling me when he went to Spain, they I think all businesses are closed from like 3 to 5 or something like that. It's like a siesta. It's like a nap or something. It's like a rest culture. And so I was like, okay, Spain. So, and I don't know a lot about Spain, but I just use GDP as like one generic metric. So I look up the GDP of Spain, and it's like, basically, I was either number 11 or number 13 in the world, so I can't really remember, right? I was like, wow, those people basically take, you know, 2 hours off a day, and they're still like as productive as like majority. They're more productive than majority of the world. I think there's over 200 countries in the world, right? And they're not like that big. They're probably about the size of Texas. You know what I mean? So I was like, wow, well, I wonder if that brings them more joy and pleasure and happiness to their life or whatever. And probably does, you know, because like who doesn't want to, like, I don't, like, we're human beings, like we're actually designed to be more restful than people think, you know what I mean? And you know, and especially in today's go society, people don't like respect that or whatever, right? So you know, I don't know. I guess what it does, it kind of makes you like reevaluate some things where you're just kind of like, well, like, what am I doing? And does it really make me like super happy and joyful? And like, actually, I'm gonna say, like, I'm pretty happy right now because, like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm in a good place. I got good things going on. I don't think I'm like in my final scenario or anything. I feel like, you know, some changes are coming around the corner here soon, which is okay. But you know, there is kind of this whole thing where happiness is within too. Like, you can't really search for it externally. So like, the more your lifestyle revolves around you being able to go within, probably the happier you're gonna be. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I am right now. Kind of with like this new job and kind of this move up here to Dallas. It's just like a lot less stressful and a lot more easier on me. Plus, I've made it less like I'm like, my priority is like myself and my healing, and that's made like a big difference. And I'm pretty like blessed and like happy for that whole situation, and I think it's gonna get better. But you know, I also kind of had to unlearn like common think or whatever to kind of get to this point. And so I always think about, well, what would I like learn or teach to like my kids and stuff, like to make them just like kind of know this inherently, which I think we all know inherently, but to kind of put it on the forefront of their mind and kind of like that's like their goals or whatever. So, you know, just kind of like that kind of thing. So it's just like big questions like, well, you know, what do you call success or whatever? And again, I still like my definition. It's basically like happiness, like joy, peace, you know, love, those feelings that you're having those like frequently and daily, like you're pretty successful. And I think a lot of people don't think you can live like that too, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people kind of probably have this mind block where it's like, well, I can't because of this, and this. And I think you can, you know, you actually can. It's just, it might be hard for you to swallow some of those reality pills that you'd have to swallow in order to get to that point or whatever, right? And a lot of that has to do, again, with like external opinions of you and everything like that. So yeah, you know, I think that's kind of it. That's kind of all I wanted to say. So think about those kind of things, especially people out there who are like kind of graduating college. I know it's like May, you know, everybody's like graduating. So it's like, what really, like, think about the word success and kind of define it. And if you want to be super cool, like down below, you can totes define the success or whatever, and see how it stacks out versus everybody else. And you know what? Actually, I was going to bring up a whole nother point, and I just forgot. I'm 12 minutes in. What's another couple minutes? So anyway, part 2 of the same video. I'm gonna go to I'm gonna go to a new neighborhood and spin around. It's across the street. How's that? I've never seen anybody in this neighborhood. It's super weird. So today we're gonna go on an adventure. But yeah, I think a lot of this too kind of goes off of yesterday's video, you know, unofficial part 2 here, where I was talking about like kind of how the Matrix is kind of like boring or whatever. Well, I think darn it, that car drove in front of me. Maybe. Oh, yeah. A part of this too is like, as another reason things are kind of boring to me is because I was recently introduced to this term called transurfing. And actually, I knew about it before, but I guess I'm listening to an audiobook, and I'll probably have to put that in the link below. And Rose kind of hit on this yesterday too, like the excess potential thing she talked about in her video. And I'll keep it real short, but like in a nutshell, transurfing is kind of like there's like these pendulums, and that's the word he uses to describe like energy. So it's like, an example would be like war. You know, there's a lot of people that are like want war, a lot of people that don't want war, and because of energy from both sides, it creates a pendulum swing where obviously both kind of things happen. There's war, there's not war, whatever, right? And so he's talking about like the way to kind of master life or whatever is to know that these pendulums exist and pretty much kind of ignore them is kind of the term that he uses a little bit. In other words, and I think a better way to say it is just kind of like be the observer. Like, observe it, don't say good, bad, don't put any judgment into it, just observe it, discern it, and like recognize it. And I know the Real Self talks about this as well, and that's kind of what the point of the push down meditation exercise is as well, is kind of become more of an observer, like inherently. And booger. And I was like, yeah, like that's kind of interesting, because like I definitely feel like you know, and I talked about this in like our long format podcast that we had the other day, where I was like, yeah, I kind of like still do politics stuff, and I don't really know why. It's just like entertaining for me. But then like as I learned about this whole pendulum swing thing, I was like, oh man, I was like, even as I'm like participating on like the good side, quote unquote, if there even is one, like I'm still giving this whole concept energy. So like if I really want change, which I do, then like it's almost like I got to ignore this kind of stuff or whatever, right? And I was like, well, geez, that kind of sucks, because I was like, what else am I gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, that's like kind of how I pass my time. And it's not like I spent an absurd amount of time on it. It's just like my little escape, I guess you could say. So I'm like, well, great. Like, all my little escape is ruined, because like all I'm doing is contributing to this concept that I don't even really want in the first place. So like, what's the better thing to do? And I guess it's pretty much to quote ignore this train of thinking or whatever, right? Or like these ideas. It's like, don't give them any energy, right? And I'm like, yeah, that actually makes like so much sense or whatever, right? And it kind of goes to, you know, there's a lot of things like that in the world where, like, you know, if we all just collectively were like, you know what, I'm not going to participate in this anymore, right? Like, we would have so much more power as humanity versus, like, let's just say the powers that be. And I was like, that's like super right. So, you know, that's another thing where I was kind of like, well, what do I do now? Well, you know, it made me think, like, I was like, hey, my life is like boring if I can't do any of this stuff. It's probably already boring before in some ways, and I'm not complaining. It just is what it is. So yeah, there's like that whole concept of transurfing, I think, is super interesting with the pendulums, and like you giving energy to stuff voluntarily, involuntarily, and even when you're like not even aware that you are, like if you're just like, well, I don't care about, you know, these events in the news, but I still read the papers about them. Well, what's going to happen is you're eventually going to get sucked in some way, shape, or form, and then you are going to give it in. And that's kind of how this whole thing is designed, right? Like the powers that be kind of know this, and they kind of design these things to like suck in and, you know, make you contribute to like the energy pendulums so that they can continue their little gambit, you know what I mean? And it's kind of disempowering and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool concept, and I inherently know it's true. And I already knew this day would come in some way, shape, or form. Like a lot of my like interests or whatever, like kind of slowly fade out as I became more and more interested in like consciousness or you know, development or whatever you want to say. And you know, I'm just kind of living it real time. So like, you know, there's part of me too that's like not a machine. So it's like, well, what do I do with all my free time? If some of it's like, well, just think about development, do development. I'm like, well, that kind of wears you out after a while, because like, you know, we're only human, and like I can only absorb so much information, especially when it's like kind of dense information, you know what I mean, like in the course of a day. So, you know, as much as I'd like to be where I can just like listen to like the audiobooks for like, you know, 20 hours a day, or 10 hours a day, you know, like nonstop, and just like totally suck it all in and absorb it, I'm like, I kind of need like some breaks too. But all the stuff that I used to do for breaks is like now somewhat inherently not good for the objective of, you know, what I'm trying to, you know, help Earth do, I guess you could say. So I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? So, yeah, no, I guess part of it is going to be like, I'll just have to find things that are more lighthearted or whatever. You know, like I really like cartoons for whatever reason. Like, I guess I'm still like a big kid in a lot of ways, and like they're super, I don't know, they're just like light-hearted, and like they kind of just make you laugh, and they're silly, and I don't know, they're not as like real. So maybe I'll spend time like watching cartoons and stuff as well, just to lighten things up or whatever. You get what I'm trying to say? Because yeah, there's a lot of value, like I said, to just like laughing and being successful and being happy and stuff. So let's see, I'm on the road to work now officially, so you know, I guess I will call that a ramble. 10-4. So anyway, I hope y'all have a good weekend, and God bless.